Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm here with Evo Terra. Hi Evo.
Hi Joanne, how are you?
I'm good. So just as a little introduction, Evo is an author and a podcaster and a digital business strategist, now focusing on helping authors with digital publishing and marketing. His site is epublishedunum.com and his latest book is Making Killer Google Plus Profiles, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I know, Evo, you've been doing so much with authors over the years. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit more about you and your writing and publishing background.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And stop me when I get long-winded because, that's probably going to happen. I've been involved in the publishing world kind of from the outside since the early 2000s, which is kind of weird to have to say that. It started out, I was a radio show host, and we were interviewing authors, typically science fiction authors, but kind of everything. And so I've learned lots of different things from authors over the years. We were interviewing big, huge authors. Like I've had the pleasure of interviewing Sir Arthur C. Clarke, and also plenty of independent authors. And so I learned a lot about the publishing process as things went forward. I got into podcasting because that radio show was syndicated through the web to many different stations, and when podcasting hit in 2004, we were the 40th podcast on the planet. So we had early adopter status on that. And that's what led me to the opportunity to write my very first book, which was Podcasting for Dummies, that I wrote with a longtime author, T. Morris, who had been a guest on our show many times. So not only was I working with authors in publishing, now I finally got to be the author and go through the entire process of working with the company. And Wiley was fantastic. It was a great experience to write that book and the follow-on book from that one as well. After that, I fell into this idea of, podcasting and authors seem to go to, well, what could we actually do together? And so I created a website called audiobooks.com where we help authors distribute their books as free serialized audiobooks that they record themselves, just like any podcaster records his or her show. You can do the same thing with a book. We started out with 5 titles in 2005, and there are 650 titles up there today, all of which are free to listen to. There's no charge to the author, there's no charge to the listener. Everything's out there totally free of charge. So that's kind of how I went through this process of publishing. To me, it means more than having a book in a bookstore. It means having your stuff out there to read. And then where we're at today is we're creating these, as part of ePublish Unum, this collection of books that we call a modern indie author's guide to really help people with very, very specific needs. There are lots of books out there that say how to do this big thing as an indie author. Ours are very narrowly focused, like, for example, how authors can be really successful with Google+.
Well, and it's amazing. And, I on another, show, I would ask you about audiobooks, but we're here talking about Google Plus today.
That's right.
And I've had T. Morris on the show. I've had Pip Valentine, and so quite a few people in the podcasting community. So let's talk about Google Plus. So first up, I think a lot of authors are still shying away from it. So very first question, for those who are fatigued with another social media, why should anyone care about Google Plus?
So for me, Google Plus was kind of a breath of fresh air. I'm an early adopter. At one point in time, I counted up the social profiles I had back in 2008, and the number was approaching 90. Which is way too many for anyone to keep up with. No one should go down that crazy path. But with Google Plus, there was something special about it, and that something special was called Google. While you can fault Google for lots of silly things that never went anywhere, like Wave, for example, Latitude, which has recently got killed. But Google Plus was really the first one that connected these things together. I recognized early on, as did a lot of other people, I don't want to claim monopoly on the smartness here, there were a lot of us talking in the early days, that this was something different. This wasn't just a social network. This was a social layer that connected all the various Google properties together nicely for a simple, singular integration. And free of the baggage, I think, of the other typical social media platforms you think of, whether it's MySpace, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. This was something that was a little different, and there are some great things that people can do who are willing to take the time and energy to invest in this. It can pay off well, but it's a different social platform than the other ones that are there.
Yeah, and I wondered about that, like how, I mean, really for me, I love Twitter. Twitter's still like my big thing. But in the few months I've been on Google Plus, I've already seemed to have a bigger audience than I do on Facebook. And my immediate reaction is, I want to leave Facebook because I don't really like it. But how will you compare, say, Google Plus to Facebook? Because normal people are not really on Google Plus, are they?
Well, that's the perception that's out there, and maybe that's true in some cases. But to do the comparison, first off, Facebook is where you hang out with the people that you already know in life. These are your friends, these are your family members, and if you're an author, these are the fans that you have met through the process. But these typically are people that you know. Some authors have been successful about using Facebook, and in fact, yesterday we just published our Facebook book in the Modern Indie Author Guide, but we're not talking about that. But for people like me, and sounds like people like you as well, then that's the place we interact with family and friends and people that we already know. It's very difficult to strike up a new friendship, if you will, on Facebook. Much like Twitter. Twitter is, quick news feeds, 140 characters, wonderful, fast-breaking news. Follow the really interesting, pithy people, and you'll kind of have fun all day long. I still use Twitter today. LinkedIn is for business, and I don't know what MySpace is trying to do. But the difference with Google Plus is that Google Plus is a place where you follow people or add them to your circles who share the same sorts of interests as you. I have over 140,000 people right now that have added me to their circles on Google+. I don't know 140,000 people. But these 140,000 people are interested in the types of things that I have to share, which is typically publishing, science-y stuff, and lots of things on craft beer, my three loves in life, if you will. So to me, they are able to follow me because I'm interesting, and vice versa. For the 1,000 or so people that I follow, I do so because they're talking about the things, they're sharing the kinds of things that I really like, that I'm interested in, not because I happen to know who they are and we share the same high school together. It's a very different platform.
And because, I'm on Google Plus. I do go on there every day. I try and use it, but I'm now thinking, so is it best to be a person or to have like a business page? Because at the beginning on Facebook, we all did it just from us, and then we all realized we had to set up a page. What's your recommendation with Google Plus?
So it's flipped from Facebook. Facebook, I think most authors who are brand new to the platform, not old school people doing it, but if you want to be an author on Facebook, you use a page more so than a profile because you've got to protect some privacy. That's flipped on Google+. Google+ is, since it's all about sharing interest and sharing and learning things from people who may be experts in that one, I recommend authors approach Google+ as themselves as the author. Not necessarily themselves as the filing clerk at the local office supply store, but themselves as the author. You don't have to list your high school. You don't have to do all of those sorts of things, but you definitely want to be a person. Your author profile on Google Plus is key and important because you don't have to worry about the friends and family spillover that you have to worry about on Facebook. Sometimes authors need a delineation between I'm going to talk about me as an author versus I'm going to share pictures of my cat on Facebook. And that's fine. But on Google Plus, you don't really have to have that differentiation.
And what if you have two brands? Because I have a fiction brand for JF Penn, and I have the creative pen for authors. How I'm just one at the moment.
Sure. You're a rather different case than most people because you really have built a brand that's other than your name. Your name is related to your brand, obviously, but you do have these different things. So if you have your own media properties out there, it can be a bit different. So what you should do in that particular situation is probably exactly what you have done. Go ahead and be you on Google+, but you can have individual pages for your other things that you do for in life. I recommend authors who want to explore more of this is actually create pages on Google Plus for their book or for their series. And it's okay that you're not terribly active on those things. You may only post new reviews on your book's page. That's fine. You should be really active as you. Don't worry about keeping the activity stream of those things on Google Plus up. It's just a nice property to have.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good one. Okay, let's talk about the profile. Obviously, if you're a Gmail user, you already kind of exist, but you still need to fill it in, or you can start from scratch. So give us some of the important things that people get wrong.
and boy, do they ever. Because Google has made this nice thing where if you're using any other Google property, you have a Google Plus page or Google Plus profile. You just probably don't know where it is. Most people get it wrong because they're not filling out some pretty key and important things. So obviously, photography is important. Just like with any other social network, you start with a blank head, and we call them blue heads in the Google Plus world. So please upload something that looks like you, preferably. I'm not a big fan of avatars or sketches or interesting photos. I think if you're going to be an author on Facebook, you should look like an author on Facebook, and you may have some issues with being a real person, but you're probably going to run into people at conventions, so eventually your identity will get out. So pretty please, with sugar on it, take a picture of yourself about this big. Nice little headshot here. I don't need something all the way in the background that looks very cool. No, that's not very cool. I'd like to see who you are. That's the first thing to get right. But the big three things in your profile that I think stand out for people is Google has a concept of a story, and the story is you, and it's really where you tell people who you are. It's your description of yourself. Rich text is okay. You can use bold, you can use italics, you can use strike-throughs, you can embed links inside of that. It's perfectly fine to do that. So it's like a little mini bio of yourself, but you should really, as an author, describe who you are, or perhaps more importantly, who it is you want people to perceive you as an author. You need to be sure that you stick with that when you're publishing things. Don't make a big disconnect. But fill out your story. That's the first thing. There's three. The second one is there's a section within your profile for links. Links, if the story says who you are, the links prove it. So the links go back to your website. The links can go back to other social properties. That's fine. You can do that. But the biggest thing authors need to do is link to your books. Link to the books that you have for sale. I've made the choice to actually link my books simply to Amazon. Yeah, they're available in Barnes & Noble and Smashwords and other sorts of places like Kobo. But I'm linking to Amazon because, A, it's the biggest one that's out there. And it has that nice little A symbol that gets pulled from the favicon next to my links. If you link to a landing page on your website, you may not have that sort of branding. So at a glance, someone may not know that that link section contains links to books. So that's kind of important. And the last thing to think about, so you've said who you are in your story, you've proved who you are in the links. Contact information is so crucial because there may be somebody out there who does a writing podcast in video that wants to reach you and use you as a guest on her show. Can she get a hold of you? I list phone number, I list email address. I'm wide open because I would like more people to reach out and contact me, not just for random conversations. That's not going to happen. I'm not worried about that. I'm not so popular that my phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning. But if somebody does want to reach me for business opportunities, interviews, collaborations, whatever, I need to have those things done. So story and links and a contact along with your pretty little face, and you'll go far.
Fantastic. And yeah, I mean, you're giving me some good tips here. And it's so funny because a lot of these things, and I would advise people, you just get started and you can add layers over time, right? Right. But if people have set up their profile, how do they go about starting to use it?
Once you've got your profile set up, the biggest challenge anybody is going to face, especially if you're reluctantly using social media, or perhaps you've become self-aware enough to recognize that you're doing it very, very poorly. You need a plan. You need a pretty deep plan of exactly how you will approach this. Think about the types of things you want to share and why you want to share them. I always recommend people start by figuring out who they are back in that story section. What are the types of things you said that you do are interesting in your life, and those are the things that you should actually start sharing. Because at the end of the day, your success comes from the content that you create and you place out in social properties. Google Plus is a very visual medium, so gigantic photos are great. It loves them. It fills up an entire screen. It just looks good. It's very, very rich and experience in there. What we've put together as a part of the book, but it's actually available for free, is we've got a free worksheet that lives over at our website. I'll tell you the address later, so you can put it in the show notes there. And it's a litmus test that talks about these certain types of content. There's sharing content, there's informative content, there's collaboration and engagement content, and then there's even finally the asking content of would you please buy my book? And we talk about what types of things to do. And the worksheet is a very nice process because you go through, you make little tick marks next to each one. We identify what they are, and then you go through and you evaluate your last 50 posts or until you come up with a check mark and everything. And you see how many times you're doing one thing versus the other. And it's very eye-opening. When I did it on my own stuff and went, wow, I'm totally doing this stuff the wrong way, and I know the rules. It's a good refresher course for anyone. Free worksheet, download it, one simple sheet, explains what they are, go through, and that'll help you identify are you sharing the things you probably should be sharing as an author on Google Plus to make you an interesting person.
And I mean, I'm just thinking, oh goodness, pretty much every day I put one of my own posts on for SEO, and I go in and I +1 a whole load of things, and then I might share a couple of other posts from other things. But now you're saying that, I'm like, oh dear, what am I doing wrong?
Here's the key thing with that. If you think about Facebook and you think about Twitter, these are places you have to go. It is a destination. I need to go to Facebook and engage. Yes, it comes to your phone. I get that. And the same thing for Twitter. You need to go to Twitter or fire up your Twitter application like Hootsuite to do things. But it's not a part of your life. Google Plus changes that. If you're a Gmail user like I am, Google Plus, everything comes right there into your inbox. It's part of your daily activity. That +1 button is everywhere. So to me, it's much less of a destination and much more of this is the conduit which I will share things out as they are important to me and as I discover them and interact with people. There are many times when I don't actually go to Google Plus all day long. I just interact with people through my Gmail account because we're commenting and back and forth on the exact same post. It works out really well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess one of the most basic things people should be doing is if they have a WordPress site or any site, including a +1 button, even just, or I'm putting their G+, profile as a link.
Yeah, if you're an author and you have an established presence out there on the web, everything you said is exactly right. Google makes it fairly simple for you to put a little badge on there that says, "Hey, I'm over here on Google Plus that you should do." But one caution I will tell authors is expect something different on Google Plus than you get on your other platforms, particularly Facebook. And don't try and encourage. I would recommend not trying to encourage your hardcore Facebook fans to join you on Google Plus. It's a different audience. It is the second largest social network out there. Yes, Facebook is bigger. Depending on how you count, Google Plus now is actually larger than Twitter. I think it's much easier for you to establish yourself on Google Plus and create a brand new network. But don't try and drag your friends and family along. I'm not suggesting you abandon Facebook. I haven't abandoned Facebook. I'm still there. Not very much, but I'm kind of a weird special case. Authors kind of need to be in the places where their audience is. So if you've developed a great following on Facebook, then keep on keeping on over there. Figure out how you can layer Google Plus in, and you'll find yourself with a new audience. And I don't know any authors who wouldn't be looking every day to find new people to expose their work to.
No, exactly. And in my experience, a lot of the connectors and, as you say, early adopters are on G+. So that's actually a good way to meet people and connect with people who are tired of Twitter.
Yeah, tired of Twitter, tired of Facebook. There's a lot of inside baseball, Hall of Mirrors type stuff. But of course, I think that exists everywhere on all the navel gazing that happens. Perhaps more so on Google Plus. But if you can get past that, then you'll have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. And so where's it all going? 'Cause, I mean, we talk a bit about fatigue there and being over things. I mean, are we, in this whole social world, are we just going to keep getting new tools and being fatigued and moving on to the next one and growing again? And, because I think people really are kind of wondering, how do they keep a hold of all this stuff? Yeah,
it's definitely a challenge. But if when I look back at the big changes in social media over the last 6, 7, 8 years it's been happening, we haven't had very many things that have been replacements. We've had new things we didn't know. Like, let's think Flickr. Who knew that you needed to share your vacation photos with the world? I mean, your crazy uncle with the too tight shorts did that all the time at family reunions, and nobody liked him. But suddenly Flickr makes it okay to do things. With Facebook, we had a much better way to connect with friends and family. With Twitter, we had this instant news stream that happened all the time, and so when planes crash land on the Hudson River, we find about it there first more than anything. none of them replace anything else. Just like Google Plus isn't going to replace the other ones, it's just becoming more ingrained in our lives. There was a research study by the Pew Foundation, big, huge company that does all these sorts of who's doing what. They actually opted to leave Google Plus out of their survey because they said that people in the survey were having a difficult time figuring out when they were on Google versus when they were on Google Plus. And so their counting was skewed. And so rather than try and figure out that this is a serious problem, we should work on it, they simply said, we're not going to talk about it at all. And a lot of people cited that as well, then Google Plus has a branding problem. And I say, no, you've got a perception problem. This should just fade into everything that we do. And you don't know that you're going someplace to interact. You're just simply there. We're seeing it with the Google Now application that's on iPhones and Android phones, to where you're getting the kind of information you need right when you need it without having to go through and search. I think that's where it's going, and social is just one more layer to add into that whole mix.
Yeah, well then, just taking it a bit further, the one thing I see we're missing out on in the self-publishing world is at the moment Google Books in Google Play is terrible. And
it's atrocious.
It is a shocking thing, and it's the big thing that's missing as far as I can see. If Google wants to be this layer rather than just a network. Do you know anything about the Google Books, Google Play whole thing?
Yeah, I do. I can tell you that they have promised me that they're trying to fix it. I've been a Google user since 1999 on a lot of their products. Part of me makes money in the online marketing world as well, not the bad stuff, but the actual legitimate stuff. And so I've used Google interfaces before. The Google Play interface is from 2004. It is just horrid. Everything is done through spreadsheet uploads. It's just really, really rotten, and it makes absolutely no sense. Send us a print copy of your book or your PDF. What about just an EPUB? You have to hunt to find out how to upload a regular. It's atrocious. But I've been promised, both by people that I know at Google Plus, as well as people that they've introduced me to at Google Play Books, who I was not very nice to, that they are coming up with a new interface, and they better do it quick, because you have companies like Kobo that make the process of uploading a book so wonderful. It is. I really like putting a book on Kobo, more so than I like Amazon and now Nook Press by Barnes and Noble, because the elegant interface that's happening. Yeah, Google Play has a long ways to go. I think if they can crack that nut, perhaps more authors will learn to explore the ideas of Google Play, because as the Android operating system spreads around, there's going to be more chances to expose your book through that platform. I would like to have my books there. They're not, because it's maddening. But when they fix it, perhaps they will be.
Okay, good, because I see that as the point where it will become more of a place for authors, when you can actually be able to, get your book in more search results because it's in there, so...
It's interesting you bring up search results, because obviously Google Plus is great for getting books listed inside of search results. But the thing that I found most amazing is, so when I published my most recent book, the Google Plus book, and we saw the same thing on our Creating Fabulous Facebook pages, the very first site to be listed in Google search results wasn't Google Plus, it wasn't Amazon, it wasn't Barnes & Noble, it was Smashwords. Of all strangest things, if you type in the name of my book, Smashwords was the #1 listing. That only lasts for a few days before Amazon bumps up in the rankings. It could just be a size, a scalability issue of how long does it take those pages to get discovered. Perhaps they're more easily discovered in Goodreads, or perhaps it's because I'm connected to so many indie authors who utilize services like Smashwords and Goodreads to upload their things. I'm getting more personal results. But yeah, I don't know how. I'm not seeing very many Google Play results in anything when I search for products right now. So I know that Google needs to address that, because they certainly should.
Yeah, because my husband is an early adopter like you, and he's recently given up on Apple, and he's moved to the Android, and he's got the tablets and the phone and Play, and is switching to Play for music, and then he's like, what's going on with this? So I'm like, well, we have to get this sorted. So good, I'm glad that's on the table. So just tell us a little bit more about ePublish Unum and what you offer authors.
Sure. So we've been working for a couple of years now. It's two people, well, four if you count our lovely wives to assist us and do the things that, and kick us in the butt occasionally. But it's me and my partner, Jeff Moriarty. And our job at ePublish Unum is we create workshops and guidebooks and roadmaps to help indie authors cut through this crazy complexity that is out there. Because there's a lot to do. There's lots of things to do. And so many people, when they think of indie publishing, just think of all I have to do is create an EPUB and load it to Amazon and I'm done. And there's more to it than that. Indie publishing, digital publishing as we call it, stretches everything from writing to editing to that very active publishing, which doesn't necessarily mean a paying marketplace. There's lots of places to publish, all the way through into promoting and then finally interacting with your fans. And it's a big cycle, right? We do all of that. So what we started doing 2 years ago was offering these classes where we'd teach people the full process. And today we're more focused on individual small things. Where are we seeing the challenges happen? And that's what we do. We create these books. We have classes and workshops. There's lots of ways. We for the last 3 weeks in a row. Well, every 2 weeks we've been doing some classes in a local independent bookstore here in town, teaching these basic skills and retraining the way people actually think about publishing. And that's what we offer. That's what we do. We do a weekly hangout called the Books and Beer Hangout on Monday nights where we chat about publishing and while we drink beer, surprise, and try and cover one small little niche. So if you need the info, then we can help point you in the right direction or perhaps even offer you something that you can pick up from us.
Fantastic. And the website?
epublishunum.com.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Evo. That was brilliant.
You're welcome. Thanks very much. Have a great day.